I'd spent 10 years paying their mortgage month after month without a single question. I thought I was building a home for us all, a place where love and family would always have room. But when Thanksgiving came, my son's voice on the phone was cold as winter rain. "Mom, there's no space for you this year. No space for me." I stayed quiet, not because I was weak, but because I was waiting. Something inside me knew this wasn't the end of the story. Welcome to the Betrayal Revenge channel, where stories come alive through voices you've never heard told this way before. Thank you for joining us in uncovering the raw truth of human emotions. It all began on a crisp November afternoon in the quiet of my small Portland apartment as I prepared for a Thanksgiving I'd never get to attend. The air smelled of cinnamon and roasted pumpkin, the kind of scent that wraps around you like a warm shawl. My kitchen counter was a mess of flour-dusted bowls and cooling pies, 2 pumpkin, 1 pecan, because Noah, my grandson, loved sneaking bites of both. I hummed softly, an old hymn my mother used to sing, as I folded the last corner of wax paper over the pies. My hands moved with the ease of years, steady despite the ache in my knuckles. On the table, a half-finished scarf for Noah lay in a tangle of soft blue yarn, the needles glinting under the lamplight. I'd promised him something warm for the winter, something to keep him cozy when the Oregon winds turned sharp. I glanced at the clock. 3:17 p.m., plenty of time to pack before the drive to Eric's house tomorrow. My suitcase sat open by the door, already stuffed with clothes and a small gift for Chelsea, my daughter-in-law. A silver bracelet I'd saved up for, simple but elegant, the kind of thing she'd never buy for herself. For Eric, I'd tucked in a new leather wallet, his old one worn thin at the edges, and the pies, of course, would be the centerpiece of our Thanksgiving table. I could already picture it. Noah's giggles, Chelsea's shy smile, Eric carving the turkey with that exaggerated flourish he always did to make us laugh. My family, my home in a way, even if I didn't live there. The phone rang, shattering the quiet. I wiped my hands on my apron, the fabric soft and faded from years of use, and picked up the receiver. Eric's name glowed on the screen, and my heart lifted. He rarely called this close to the holidays. Too busy, he'd say, with work and Noah's school events. I pressed the phone to my ear, a smile already forming. "Eric, sweetheart," I said. "Everything okay?" There was a pause, just long enough to make my stomach twist. His voice came through, smooth but clipped, the way it got when he was choosing his words carefully. "Mom, yeah, hi. Look, about Thanksgiving. I hate to do this, but can you stay home this year?" The words hit like a gust of cold air, sharp and sudden. My fingers tightened around the phone, the plastic creaking faintly. "Stay home?" I echoed, my voice thinner than I meant it to be. "Yeah," he said, and I could hear him shifting, maybe pacing in that big kitchen I'd helped pay for. "Chelsea's mom is coming. She's not doing great health-wise, and, well, we only have 3 bedrooms. It's going to be tight. You get it, right?" I stood frozen, the warmth of the kitchen draining away. The pies on the counter, the scarf, the suitcase, they all seemed to mock me now, relics of a plan that was crumbling before it could begin. 3 bedrooms, I repeated softly, as if saying it out loud would make it make sense. I'd slept on their couch before, hadn't I? I'd made do with a blanket and a pillow, happy just to be there, to hear Noah's laughter in the morning. Why was this different? "Mom, you still there?" Eric's voice cut through, a little impatient now. It's not a good time. Chelsea's mom needs the space, and it's going to be hectic. You'd be more comfortable at home." Comfortable. The word stung, like a polite slap. I forced a smile, though he couldn't see it, and said, "Of course, Eric, I understand." My voice was steady, but inside something cracked. "Tell Chelsea I hope her mom feels better." "Thanks, Mom," he said, relief flooding his tone. "We'll make it up to you, I promise. Maybe Christmas, okay?" "Sure," I said, already knowing I didn't believe it. The call ended with a soft click, and the silence rushed back, heavier than before. I set the phone down, my hands trembling just enough to notice The deep welcome home I'd made for their front door, a silly little thing, hand-drawn with Noah's favorite colors, lay on the table. I'd spent hours on it, imagining his face when he saw it. Now my fingers curled around it, the paper crinkling under my grip until it was a crumpled ball in my palm. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stood there staring at the pies, the scarf, the suitcase, and felt a question take root, sharp and unyielding. Was this just a coincidence? Or was it something deeper, something I'd been too blind to see? What does it mean to give everything to your family, only to wonder if they ever saw you at all? I'd poured my life into building a home for my son, my grandson, my daughter-in-law, every dollar, every sleepless night, every quiet sacrifice. But standing there with Eric's words still ringing in my ears, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been invisible all along. Had they ever noticed the weight I carried for them? Or was I just a shadow in their story, fading into the background? The kitchen was dim now, the afternoon light fading into a soft gray that spilled through the window. The pies sat untouched on the counter, their golden crusts no longer warm. I sank into a chair, the wood creaking under me, and let my hands rest on the table, fingers brushing the crumpled welcome home thepe. My eyes drifted to the scarf I'd been knitting for Noah, its blue yarn soft as a whisper. I'd imagined him wearing it, his small hands tugging at the ends, his laughter filling Eric's house. But now that image felt distant, like a photograph left too long in the sun. I closed my eyes and the past came rushing back, sharp and heavy, like the scent of rain on old pavement. It was 10 years ago, just after my husband Tom passed. The grief had hollowed me out, left me raw, but I'd kept moving, for Eric. He was 30 then, newly married to Chelsea, their love bright but their pockets empty. They dreamed of a house in Portland, a place to raise a family, but the numbers didn't add up. I saw the worry in Eric's eyes, the way Chelsea's shoulders tensed when the bills piled up. So I made a choice. I sold our family home, the one Tom and I had built, where Eric had taken his first steps, where we'd carved our initials into the oak tree out back. It wasn't easy. Every room held a memory. Tom's laughter, Eric's crayons scattered on the floor, the smell of Sunday roasts. But I let it go, piece by piece, until the money was in my hands. I gave it all to Eric and Chelsea, every cent, for the down payment on their 3-bedroom house in Portland. I can still feel the weight of the check in my fingers, the way my heart ached and swelled at the same time when I handed it over. Eric hugged me, his arms tight, and said, "Mom, you're our rock." Chelsea's eyes shone with tears as she whispered, "We'll never forget this." But that wasn't the end of it. After Noah was born, their expenses grew. Diapers, formula, doctor's visits. Chelsea stayed home, and Eric's job barely covered the mortgage, so I started sending money. Every month, without fail, $1,800 left my account and landed in theirs. It wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was my grocery budget trimmed, my winter coat patched instead of replaced, my evenings spent mending clothes to save a few dollars. I didn't mind. Noah's chubby cheeks, Chelsea's tired but grateful smiles, Eric's quick, "Thanks, Mom," over the phone. It was enough, or so I thought. When Chelsea was pregnant, sick and bedridden, I'd drive 3 hours to their house, my old car rattling over the highway. I'd cook for them, chicken soup, soft bread, anything she could keep down. I scrubbed their floors, folded their laundry, stayed up late so they could sleep. Once, when Noah was a newborn, screaming through the night, I rocked him for hours, my arms aching, my back stiff, just so Eric and Chelsea could rest. I was their foundation, their safety net, their invisible hands holding everything together. And yet, no one ever asked, "Mom, are you okay?" No one wondered if I had enough to eat, if my apartment was warm enough in the winter, if I was lonely in the quiet of my own life. I didn't expect them to. I was their mother, their grandmother. Giving was what I did. It was who I was. But now, sitting in my kitchen, the phone silent, Eric's words, "There's no space for you," cut deeper than I could have imagined. Had they ever seen me? Not the money, not the meals, not the endless hours, but me, Evelyn, the woman who'd given up her own comfort for theirs? I opened my eyes. The apartment still and cold around me. The pies stared back, their sweetness now bitter in my throat. I thought of the house I'd helped buy, the one with 3 bedrooms, polished floors, and a backyard where Noah played. I'd built that home for them, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. But if there was no room for me at their table, what was I to them? A bank account? A forgotten promise? A ghost who'd served her purpose? My fingers tightened around the crumpled teep, the edges biting into my palm. I'd always believed I was their rock, their foundation, steady and unshakable. But now, a different truth settled in, cold and unyielding. I wasn't their rock. I was the concrete beneath their feet, hidden, stepped on, and forgotten. And if that was true, what else had I been blind to all these years? How do you keep your voice steady when the ground beneath you starts to crack? Eric's words had already shaken me, but I told myself it was a misunderstanding, a moment of thoughtlessness. I could fix this. I could make room for myself in their world, couldn't I? But as I dialed his number again, a quiet dread curled in my chest. What if this wasn't a mistake? What if the door I'd helped build was already closed to me? The apartment was too quiet, the kind of stillness that presses against your ears. The crumpled welcome home teep lay on the table, its bright colors now a cruel reminder of a plan unraveling. The pies sat untouched, their scent fading into the air. My hands, still dusted with flour, trembled as I picked up the phone. I stared at Eric's name on the screen, my thumb hovering over the call button. I could still hear his voice, calm, polite, but sharp enough to cut. "Can you stay home this year?" I'd let it slide, told him I understood, but the words had lodged in me like a splinter. I needed to try again. I needed to know. I pressed the button and held the phone to my ear, the ringing loud in the silence. My heart thudded, each beat heavy, like footsteps on a hollow floor. When Eric answered, his voice was distracted, the faint clatter of dishes in the background. "Mom, what's up? I'm kind of in the middle of something." I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay light. "Eric, I was just thinking about what you said, about Thanksgiving. I know it's tight with Chelsea's mom coming, but I could sleep on the sofa. You know I don't mind. I've done it before, and I'd be fine with just a blanket." I paused, waiting, hoping for the warmth I used to hear in his voice. There was a long pause, the kind that stretches until it hurts. I could picture him, standing in that kitchen I'd helped pay for, his brow furrowed, his jaw tight. When he spoke, his tone was softer but no less firm, like he was explaining something to a child. "Mom, it's not about the sofa. The house is going to be full and it's going to be loud. Chelsea's mom needs quiet, and honestly, it's just not a good setup for you. You'd be better off at home, resting." Resting. The word landed like a stone, heavy and cold. I pressed my lips together, my free hand gripping the edge of the table, the wood cool under my fingers. "Eric," I said, my voice quieter now, "I don't need much. I just want to be there. For Noah, for you and Chelsea. It's Thanksgiving." He sighed, a sharp, impatient sound that made my chest tighten. "Mom, I get it, but we're trying to keep things simple. Chelsea's stressed, I'm swamped with work, and her mom's not doing great. It's just not the right time, okay?" Not the right time. I closed my eyes, the words sinking in, each one a small wound. The kitchen felt smaller, the walls closing in, the air thick with the fading smell of cinnamon. I wanted to argue, to tell him about the pies, the scarf, the hours I'd spent preparing to be part of their holiday. But something in his voice, the finality, the distance, stopped me. It was as if he'd already decided my place, and it wasn't with them. "I see," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to make things harder." "You're not," he said quickly, but there was no warmth in it, just a rush to end the call. "We'll figure something out for Christmas, Mom. I gotta go. Noah's making a mess. Talk soon, okay?" The line went dead before I could respond. I lowered the phone, my hand shaking, the screen glowing faintly in the dim light. The apartment was silent again, but it felt different now, empty in a way that went beyond sound. I looked at the suitcase by the door, half packed, the bracelet for Chelsea glinting inside. I thought of the house in Portland, the one I'd poured my savings into, the one where Noah's toys littered the floor and Chelsea's laughter used to echo. I'd always seen it as ours, a shared home built on love and sacrifice, but Eric's words had redrawn the lines. It's not a good setup for you. Not my home, not my place. I stood slowly, my legs heavy, and walked to the window. Outside, the Portland sky was a dull gray, the streetlights flickering on as dusk settled. My reflection stared back at me, gray hair tucked loosely behind my ears, eyes tired but sharp. I'd given them everything, money, time, pieces of myself I'd never get back. And yet, for the first time, I felt like a stranger in their world, someone who needed permission to belong. My fingers brushed the windowsill, the wood worn smooth by years of my touch. I thought of Noah, his small hand in mine, and Chelsea, who used to call me when she was overwhelmed. I thought of Eric, my boy, who once looked at me like I could fix anything. Had I been wrong to assume they'd always make room for me? Or was this something else, something colder, that I hadn't yet dared to name? How do you keep breathing when the truth hits like a blade? I'd told myself Eric's rejection was just a moment of stress, a misunderstanding I could forgive. But as I sat there, staring at my phone, a single image shattered that fragile hope. It wasn't just that they didn't want me at Thanksgiving. It was that they'd lied, boldly, carelessly, as if I didn't matter at all. What else had they hidden behind their polite smiles? The apartment felt colder now, the silence thicker, like a fog settling over everything. The suitcase by the door stood untouched, its open mouth mocking me with the gifts I'd so carefully chosen: Chelsea's bracelet, Eric's wallet, Noah's scarf. The pies on the counter had gone cold, their golden crusts dull under the fading light. I sat at the kitchen table, the crumpled "Welcome Home" theep still clenched in my hand, its edges biting into my palm. My chest ached, a dull, persistent pain, as if Eric's words, "There's no space for you," had carved out a piece of me. I needed something, anything, to pull me out of this spiral. My phone lay on the table, its screen dark but tempting. I reached for it, almost without thinking, and opened Facebook. The app loaded slowly, the familiar blue glow filling the dim room. I scrolled aimlessly, past photos of neighbors' holiday decorations, recipes for cranberry sauce, a distant cousin's post about her new dog. It was a distraction, a way to numb the hurt. But then a story popped up, a fleeting post from Nina, Eric's young cousin, someone I barely knew but had added years ago after a family barbecue. The image loaded, and my breath caught. It was a beach, golden sand stretching under a blazing sun, waves curling in the distance. The caption read, "Aloha from Hawaii, Thanksgiving getaway with the fam." And there, unmistakable, were Eric, Chelsea, and Noah. Eric stood with his arm around Chelsea, sunglasses perched on his nose, a wide grin splitting his face. Chelsea held Noah, who clutched a plastic shovel, his cheeks smeared with sand. They looked happy, carefree, like a family on a dream vacation. The timestamp was fresh, posted just an hour ago. My phone slipped from my hand, landing on the table with a soft thud. The room spun, the walls tilting as if the floor had dropped away. Hawaii. Not a crowded house with Chelsea's sick mother. Not a stressful holiday with no room to spare. Hawaii. A tropical escape, planned and paid for, while I sat here alone, believing their excuses. The lie was so blatant, so brazen it felt like a slap. They hadn't just excluded me, they'd built a story to keep me away, to erase me from their plans without a second thought. I pressed my hands to my face, the skin cool against my palms. My heart pounded, each beat a mix of shock and something sharper, betrayal, raw and jagged. I wanted to cry, to scream, to call Eric and demand answers, but I didn't. I sat there, still as stone, the silence wrapping around me like a shroud. The truth was clearer than ever. There was no sick mother-in-law, no lack of space. They didn't want me there, and they'd lied to make sure I stayed away. I stood, my legs unsteady, and walked to the window. Outside, Portland's streets were quiet, the first stars piercing the evening sky. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke, a reminder of homes where families were gathering, laughing, sharing. My reflection stared back at me. gray hair loose, eyes wide with a pain I couldn't name. I thought of the years I'd given them, the money, the late nights, the pieces of my life I'd carved away to keep their world steady. And for what? To be pushed aside, lied to, dismissed with a story so flimsy it was almost insulting. My fingers tightened around the windowsill, the wood rough under my touch. I saw Noah's face in that photo, his innocent smile, and wondered if he'd ever know the truth. I saw Chelsea, her head tilted toward Eric, and wondered if she'd gone along with the lie or if she'd been swept up in his plans. And Eric, my son, my boy, who'd once run to me with scraped knees and tear-streaked cheeks. How had he become this man, so willing to deceive me? The phone buzzed on the table, a notification I didn't bother to check. I didn't need more proof. The image was burned into me, a wound that wouldn't close. I turned back to the kitchen, my gaze falling on the pies, the suitcase, the scarf. They felt like relics now, pieces of a life I'd thought I belonged to. But if they could lie so easily, if they could erase me from their holiday with a smile and a plane ticket, what else were they capable of? And what was I going to do about it? What do you do when the people you love show you they don't love you back? I'd seen the truth in that photo, Eric, Chelsea, and Noah in Hawaii, their smiles a silent betrayal. The lie wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It was about me, my place in their lives. I'd given them everything, but now I felt like a fool holding an empty promise. As I stared at my phone, a new feeling rose, sharp and steady. I was done being their shadow, but how do you walk away from your own heart? The apartment was dark now, the only light a faint glow from the street lamp outside, casting long shadows across the floor. The pies sat cold on the counter, their edges sagging as if they too had given up. The crumpled welcome home thepe lay abandoned on the table, its bright colors faded in the dimness. My phone rested beside it, the Hawaii photo still burned into my mind. Eric's grin, Chelsea's ease, Noah's sandy cheeks. The lie was a wound, raw and pulsing, but it was more than pain. It was clarity. I stood, my bare feet cold against the hardwood, and walked to the small desk in the corner. My laptop sat there, its screen dark, a silent witness to years of transfers, bills, and budgets stretched thin. I opened it, the blue light harsh against my eyes, and pulled up my banking app. The familiar interface loaded, and there it was. The scheduled transfer to Eric Ross, $1,800, set to go out tomorrow, the first of the month, like clockwork, for 10 years. My finger hovered over the mouse, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. I could see the numbers in my head. $1,800 a month, $1,600 a year, over $200,000 since Noah was born. Money that had kept their lights on, their fridge full, their mortgage paid. Money I'd scraped together by skipping new shoes, eating rice and beans, turning down invitations to save on gas. I'd never asked for thanks, never expected it. But I'd believed, foolishly I saw now, that it meant something, that it tied us together. The photo flashed in my mind again, those carefree smiles under a tropical sun. They hadn't just lied about Thanksgiving. They'd taken my sacrifice, my love, and spent it on a vacation they didn't even invite me to. I wasn't their mother, their grandmother, their rock. I was their bank, open for withdrawals, closed for gratitude. My chest tightened, but my hands were steady. I clicked into the transfer details, the screen prompting me to confirm or cancel. Cancel. The words stared back, simple and final. I thought of Eric's voice, so casual when he'd said, "There's no space for you." I thought of Chelsea, silent in the lie, and Noah, too young to understand but caught in their world. I thought of myself, 64 years old, alone in a one-bedroom apartment, giving until I had nothing left to give. I clicked cancel. The screen refreshed, a small notification confirming the action. Scheduled transfer canceled. No fanfare, no warning bells, just a quiet shift like a door locking in the night. I leaned back in the chair, the wood creaking under me, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My heart pounded, not with fear but with something else. Resolve, hard and unyielding. I didn't call Eric. I didn't send a text to Chelsea. I didn't need to explain myself. They'd forgotten me, hadn't they? Well, I could forget too. I could forget to send the money, forget to be their safety net, forget to carry their world on my back. The silence in the apartment felt different now, not heavy, but expectant, like the pause before a storm. I stood and walked to the window, the Portland night stretching out before me. The city lights blinked in the distance, each one a small defiance against the dark. My reflection stared back, gray hair, tired eyes, but a set to my jaw I hadn't seen in years. I'd spent a decade building their home, but what had I built for myself? Nothing but this quiet apartment, these cold pies, this aching heart. My fingers brushed the windowsill, the wood worn smooth by time. I thought of Noah, his laughter, and wondered if he'd miss me. I thought of Chelsea, her quiet potential, and wondered if she'd ever see me as more than a resource. And Eric, my son, who'd grown into a man I barely recognized. What would they do when the money stopped? Would they call, angry or desperate? Or would they move on, as easily as they'd moved on to Hawaii without me? The question hung in the air, sharp and unanswered. I turned back to the desk, the laptop still open, the canceled transfer, a small rebellion. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was a line drawn, a boundary set. But what would happen when they noticed? What would they reveal when the safety net was gone? What happens when the crutch you've been for years is suddenly gone? I'd canceled the transfer, a quiet act of defiance, but I hadn't expected the fallout to come so soon. When Eric's name lit up my phone, I knew this wasn't a call to mend things. It was a reckoning. The question wasn't just what he'd say. It was who he'd reveal himself to be when the money stopped flowing. The apartment was still, the morning light filtering through the curtains, casting pale stripes across the hardwood floor. The pies had been packed away in the freezer, their sweetness locked behind frost. The suitcase remained by the door, untouched, a silent reminder of a holiday I wouldn't share. I sat at the kitchen table, a mug of black coffee cooling in my hands, its bitter steam curling upward. The canceled transfer lingered in my mind, a small but heavy choice like a stone dropped into still water. I'd felt steady when I clicked cancel, but now, in the quiet, a flicker of doubt crept in. Would they even notice? Or had I been so invisible that my absence, my money's absence, wouldn't matter? The phone buzzed, sharp and insistent, jolting me from my thoughts. Eric's name glowed on the screen and my stomach tightened. I set the mug down, the ceramic clinking softly against the table, and stared at the phone as it vibrated, each buzz a demand for answers I wasn't sure I was ready to give. But I couldn't avoid this. Not now. I picked it up, my thumb steady as I answered. "Eric," I said, my voice calm, though my heart thudded in my chest. "Mom, what's going on?" His tone was tight, edged with irritation like he was holding back a storm. "Did you forget to send the money this month? The transfer didn't come through." Forget. The word stung, a bitter echo of how they'd forgotten me for Thanksgiving. I leaned back in the chair, the wood creaking under me, and let the silence stretch for a moment. "No, Eric," I said finally, my voice low and even. "I didn't forget." There was a pause, heavy and sharp. I could almost see him, pacing in that Portland kitchen, his jaw clenched, his hand gripping the phone. "What do you mean you didn't forget?" His voice rose, impatience breaking through. "Mom, we're counting on that money. The mortgage is due, Noah's school fees are piling up, and Chelsea's not working. You can't just not send it." My fingers tightened around the phone, the plastic warm against my palm. I closed my eyes, the Hawaii photo flashing in my mind, Eric's grin, the sand, the lie. "Eric," I said, my voice still steady, though something cold and hard was rising in me. "I've been sending that money for 10 years, every month, without fail. But I'm not a bank, and I'm not obligated to keep going." He let out a short, incredulous laugh, the kind that cuts. "Obligated? Mom, come on, don't be like this. You've always helped us out. It's not like we're asking for handouts. We're family. You know how tight things are. Noah's starting preschool and it's expensive. Don't make this a thing. Don't make this a thing. The dismissal in his words hit like a slap, but it wasn't new. I'd heard it before in his "there's no space for you," in the way he'd brushed off my offer to sleep on the sofa. I opened my eyes, my gaze falling on the table, where the crumpled teep lay like a scar. "Eric," I said, my voice quieter now but firm, "I'm not making it a thing. I'm just done. I've given enough." "Enough?" His voice spiked, anger spilling over. "What's that supposed to mean? You think you can just pull the plug because you're in a mood? Mom, we need that money. You can't do this to us, to Noah. Don't be so small about it." Small. The word landed like a stone, heavy and cruel. My breath caught, but I didn't flinch. I thought of the years I'd gone without. New clothes, vacations, even heat some winters, to keep their lives steady. I thought of the house I'd sold, the nights I'd spent caring for Noah, the lie they'd told to keep me away. "Small," I repeated softly, almost to myself. "Eric, I've given you over $200,000. I sold my home for you. I've been there every time you needed me, and you call me small?" He went quiet, but it wasn't the silence of reflection. It was the silence of someone scrambling, caught off guard. When he spoke again, his tone was harder, defensive. "Mom, no one forced you to do that. You chose to help. You can't throw it in our faces now, like we owe you something. That's not fair." Fair. The word twisted in me, sharp and bitter. I stood, the chair scraping against the floor, and walked to the window. The Portland morning was gray, the air thick with the promise of rain. My reflection stared back, gray hair, tired eyes, but a strength in my posture I hadn't noticed before. "Fair," I said, my voice cold now, steady as steel. "You're right, Eric. No one forced me, and no one's forcing me to keep helping, so I'm choosing to stop." "Mom," he started, but I cut him off, my words slow and deliberate. "No one made me give, Eric, and no one gets to make me continue. I'm done." The line went silent, his breathing heavy on the other end. I could feel his anger, his panic, but I didn't waver. The apartment around me felt different, smaller but mine, a space I'd carved out despite everything I'd given away. I thought of Noah, his small hand in mine, and my heart ached. But I couldn't keep pouring myself into a family that saw me as a means to an end. "Mom, you're being ridiculous," Eric said finally, his voice low, almost a growl. "You can't just cut us off like this. We're your family." Family. The word hung between us, heavy with meaning it no longer held. I pressed my hand to the windowsill, the wood cool and solid under my fingers. "Family," I said softly, "doesn't lie to each other. Family doesn't push you out and call it kindness. I've given you everything, Eric. What have you given me?" He didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. I ended the call, the click of the phone final, like a door closing. I stood there, the city stretching out before me, its lights blurred by the threat of rain. Eric's words echoed, small, unfair, ridiculous. But they didn't hurt like I'd expected. They were proof, stark and undeniable, of who he'd become. But what about Chelsea, Noah? Were they part of this, or just caught in Eric's orbit? And what would happen now that I'd drawn my line? What does it feel like to start living for yourself after years of living for others? I'd cut the cord, stopped the money, and walked away from the role I'd played for a decade, mother, provider, invisible anchor. Eric's anger still echoed in my ears, but it couldn't touch me anymore. I was done carrying their world. Now, in the quiet of my own life, I wondered, could I build something new, something just for me, or had I forgotten how? The Portland morning was soft, the kind of gray that blankets the city in a gentle hush. I stood on my small balcony, the air cool against my skin, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and pine from the park across the street. My hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug, the coffee inside still warm, its bitterness grounding me. Below, the street stirred slowly. Dog walkers, joggers, a delivery truck rattling by. Life moved on, steady and indifferent, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could move with it. Inside, the apartment was quieter than it had ever been. The suitcase still sat by the door, but I'd zipped it shut, pushed it into a corner where it wouldn't stare at me. The pies were gone, donated to a neighbor who'd knocked yesterday, her eyes bright with gratitude as she promised to share them with her kids. The crumpled "Welcome Home" teep was tucked into a drawer, out of sight but not forgotten, a scar I wasn't ready to touch. The table held only my coffee mug and a small notebook, its pages blank, waiting for something new. I'd woken early, before the sun, my body restless with a strange energy. For years, my mornings had been shaped by others, checking my bank account to ensure the transfer went through, calling Chelsea to see if Noah needed anything, planning trips to Eric's house. But today there was no one to check on, no one to save. Just me, Evelyn Ross, 64 years old, standing on a balcony in a city that felt both familiar and foreign. I sipped my coffee, the liquid sharp on my tongue, and let my mind wander. The call with Eric had been a blade, cutting away the illusions I'd clung to. His words, "Don't be so small," had stung, but they'd also freed me. I didn't have to be their foundation anymore. I didn't have to shrink myself to fit their needs. But freedom, I was learning, was heavier than I'd expected. It came with questions. Who was I without them? What did I want, not for my family, but for myself? I set the mug down and walked back inside, my slippers whispering against the hardwood. The apartment was small, a single bedroom, a cramped kitchen, a living room with a sagging couch and a shelf of books I hadn't touched in years. But it was mine. I'd paid the rent, kept the lights on, even when it meant skipping new coats or cutting my own hair. I'd always seen it as a temporary place, a stopgap until I was needed again at Eric's. Now I looked at it differently. This was my home, and maybe it could be more than a waiting room. I pulled on a jacket, its wool soft but frayed at the cuffs, and headed out. The park across the street was my destination, a place I'd passed countless times but rarely stopped to explore. The air was crisp, smelling of wet leaves and distant rain. I walked slowly, my boots crunching against the gravel path, my breath visible in small puffs. The trees were bare, their branches stark against the sky, but there was beauty in their simplicity, a quiet strength in standing through the cold. As I walked, I thought of the years I'd spent pouring myself into Eric's life, the house I'd sold for their down payment, its walls filled with memories of my husband Tom, his laugh, his calloused hands, the way he'd hum off-key while fixing the sink. The nights I'd spent rocking Noah, his tiny body warm against mine, his cries softening as I sang. The meals I'd cooked for Chelsea, her tired eyes meeting mine with a flicker of thanks. I'd given so much, but what had I kept for myself? A few photographs, a handful of trinkets, a life pared down to fit their needs. I stopped by the lake, its surface still, reflecting the gray sky like a mirror. A duck glided across, leaving a gentle ripple in its wake. I watched it, my hands tucked into my pockets, and felt a small spark of something, curiosity maybe, or possibility. I wasn't young, but I wasn't finished. There was time, wasn't there? Time to find out who Evelyn Ross could be. Back at the apartment, I passed a flyer taped to the community board in the lobby. "Volunteers needed. Sewing classes at the community center," it read, the text bold but slightly smudged. I paused, my fingers brushing the paper. I'd always loved sewing, mending Tom's shirts, stitching quilts for Eric's childhood bed, crafting small gifts for neighbors. It was a skill I'd let fade, overshadowed by the demands of being mom and grandma. I tore off the contact number, the paper crisp in my hand, and tucked it into my pocket. That afternoon, I called the community center. The woman on the phone, Julia, had a voice like warm honey. "Oh, you sew?" she said, delighted. "We've got students desperate to learn but no one to teach. Could you do a class a week, even just an hour?" I hesitated, the weight of years spent prioritizing others pressing against me. But then I thought of the lake, the duck, the quiet promise of something new. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I'd like that." The next day I taught my first class. The room was small, filled with mismatched chairs and a hum of nervous energy. My students were young, college kids mostly, with thrift store clothes and eager eyes. I showed them how to thread a needle, how to mend a seam, how to turn a scrap of fabric into something whole. Their hands fumbled, but their laughter filled the room, bright and unguarded. One girl, barely 20, held up her first stitched patch, her face glowing. "I did it, Evelyn," she said, and my name in her voice felt like a gift. That evening, I treated myself. Not to anything grand, just a pair of wool gloves, soft and gray, from a shop down the street. I'd passed them in the window for months, always telling myself I didn't need them, that the money was better spent on Noah's school supplies or Eric's bills. But now, I slipped them on, the wool warm against my skin, and felt a quiet thrill. They were mine, chosen for no one but me. Back at home, I stood in the kitchen, the gloves still on, and looked around. The apartment didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like a canvas, waiting for my mark. I thought of Eric, his anger, his entitlement, and realized it didn't define me. I thought of Chelsea and Noah, wondering if they'd ever see me as more than a resource, and I thought of myself, standing here, starting over. I'd spent so long believing my worth lay in what I gave them. But now, in the quiet of my own life, I was beginning to see. I was enough, just as I was. The phone sat silent on the table. No calls from Eric, no texts from Chelsea. I didn't expect them, not yet. But when they came, if they came, what would they find? A woman who'd learned to stand on her own, who'd built something new from the ashes of their betrayal. And what would that mean for us, for the family I'd once thought was everything? What happens when the past knocks on your door, wearing a face you used to love? I'd rebuilt my life, piece by piece, after Eric's betrayal cut me deep. The lies, the dismissal, the way he'd called me small, I'd locked them away, choosing myself over a family that didn't choose me. But when Chelsea stood in my apartment, Noah trembling in her arms, I felt the ground shift. Was this a chance to heal, or just another wound waiting to open? And could I face her without losing the strength I'd fought so hard to gain? The Portland dusk was heavy, the sky a bruised purple, streaked with clouds that promised rain. Inside my apartment, the air was warm, tinged with the faint scent of cedar from a candle flickering on the windowsill. I sat at my kitchen table, a half-knit scarf for one of my sewing students draped across my lap, the yarn soft under my fingers. The quiet was familiar now, a companion I'd grown to cherish, broken only by the occasional hum of the radiator or the distant rumble of a passing car. My life had found its rhythm. Teaching at the community center, morning walks in the park, small treats like the wool gloves I'd bought for myself. It wasn't grand, but it was mine, built from the ashes of a decade spent giving too much. A sharp knock shattered the stillness, urgent, like a heartbeat out of sync. I froze, the knitting needles clattering softly against the table. My pulse quickened, a prickle of unease crawling up my spine. Visitors were rare, especially unannounced, and the hour, just past 7 p.m., felt wrong, too late for casual calls. I stood, smoothing my sweater, and crossed the room, my slippers whispering against the hardwood. Through the peephole, I saw Chelsea, her face pale, her eyes wide with something raw, fear maybe, or desperation. Noah clung to her, his small body shivering in a too-thin jacket, his cheeks flushed with fever, his breath a faint wheeze. I opened the door, the hinges creaking, and the cold air rushed in, sharp against my skin. Chelsea's gaze locked onto mine, pleading, but there was a weight to it, a shadow of guilt that hadn't been there years ago. Noah's eyes, half closed, met mine briefly, and I saw the trust still there, untouched by the mess of our family. My heart twisted, caught between love for him and the walls I'd built to protect myself. "Evelyn," Chelsea said, her voice cracking, barely audible. "I'm sorry. I didn't know where else to go." Her words hung between us, heavy with the past. I wanted to slam the door, to keep my peace intact, to shield myself from the pain of their betrayal. The Hawaii lie, Eric's anger, the years I'd been their bank instead of their mother. But Noah's trembling form stopped me. He was 5, innocent, his small body fighting a fever he didn't deserve. I stepped back, my voice low and guarded. "Come in," I said. "But this isn't a free pass, Chelsea. I'm not who I was." She nodded, quick and jerky, as if afraid I'd retract the offer. She shuffled inside, Noah's weight pulling at her arms, her coat damp from the evening mist. The apartment felt smaller with them here, their presence like a crack in the calm I'd cultivated. Chelsea set Noah on the couch, her hands shaking as she eased off his jacket, revealing a faded sweatshirt that hung loose on his frame. His skin was hot, his breathing shallow, each wheeze a quiet alarm. I didn't hesitate. I moved to the kitchen, grabbing a glass of water and a fever patch from the drawer, relics of the days when I'd been there, everything. "Put this on his forehead," I said, handing her the patch and water, my tone brisk, practical. "He needs to cool down." Chelsea obeyed, her fingers fumbling but gentle as she pressed the patch to Noah's skin, murmuring soft words. "It's okay, baby. You're safe." Her voice trembled, and I saw the exhaustion etched into her, dark circles under her eyes, a slight tremor in her hands, a fragility that hadn't been there before. I stood back, arms crossed, leaning against the counter, the cool edge grounding me. Chelsea looked up, her eyes searching mine, but I didn't soften. "Why are you here, Chelsea?" I asked, my voice steady, though my chest ached with the weight of seeing them. "What happened?" She swallowed, her hands still resting on Noah, as if anchoring herself to him. "It's Eric," she said, her words halting, barely above a whisper. "He's not himself. The money stopped and he spiraled. He's been yelling, breaking things. Noah got sick and we couldn't afford the doctor. Not with the bills piling up. I couldn't stay there, Evelyn. Not like this. Not with him." Her words landed like stones, each one confirming what I'd feared. Eric's anger, his entitlement, hadn't faded. It had grown, turning inward, poisoning the home I'd helped build. I thought of his voice on the phone, sharp and cruel. "Don't be so small." I thought of the Hawaii photo, their carefree smiles while I sat alone. And now, Chelsea, running to me, not out of love but necessity. I wanted to believe her fear, her regret, but trust was a fragile thing, and mine had been shattered too many times. "You can stay tonight," I said, my words measured, my gaze unwavering. "Noah needs rest, and you need a safe place for now. But this isn't a return to how things were. I'm not your crutch, Chelsea. I've set boundaries, and they stay. You understand?" She nodded, her eyes glistening, but she didn't argue. "I do," she said, her voice small but sincere. "I don't expect you to fix this. I needed somewhere safe for Noah. Thank you." I turned away, busying myself with the kettle, needing the motion to steady the storm inside me. The water hissed as it heated, a familiar sound that anchored me. I poured tea, the steam rising in soft curls, and set a mug in front of Chelsea. She took it, her hands wrapping around it, but didn't drink, her eyes fixed on Noah's sleeping form. I sat across from her, the table a barrier between us, and studied her. She was different, thinner, more worn, her confidence eroded by whatever she'd been through. But was it real, this change? Or was it just survival, a mask to get what she needed? I thought of the years I'd given them, money, time, love, only to be lied to, pushed out, forgotten. I thought of the new life I'd built, the sewing classes, the park walks, the quiet joy of choosing myself. Letting Chelsea in, even for a night, felt like cracking a door I'd bolted shut. Noah's presence softened me, his innocence a bridge to the love I still carried. But Chelsea? She'd been part of the lie, the silence, the dismissal. Could I believe her now? Or was this just another step in a dance I'd already learned? The rain began outside, a soft patter against the windows, and I stood, moving to the couch to adjust Noah's quilt. His small hand twitched, warm against mine, and I felt a pang, love, fierce and unyielding, but tempered by caution. I looked at Chelsea, her head bowed, her hands still clutching the mug. "Get some rest," I said, my voice softer but firm. "We'll talk tomorrow, but don't mistake this for forgiveness. That's earned, not given." She nodded, her eyes meeting mine, a flicker of something, gratitude maybe, or resolve. I turned away, the candle's flame dancing in the corner of my vision, and felt the weight of what lay ahead. Chelsea was back, but she wasn't the same, and neither was I. Could we find a new way forward, or was this just a fleeting pause before the past pulled us under again? And what would it cost me to find out? How do you trust again when every instinct screams to keep your walls up? Chelsea's words, her promises to make things right, lingered like a fragile thread, pulling me between hope and caution. Noah's small hand in mine, his trust so pure, made me want to believe in her. But I'd been burned before, by lies, by betrayal, by a family I'd given everything to. Now, as I watched Chelsea try to rebuild, I faced a new challenge. Could I let her prove herself without risking the peace I'd fought for? Or was this just another chapter in a story I already knew the ending to? The Portland rain had started again, a soft patter against the apartment windows, blurring the city lights into a gentle haze. Inside, the air was warm, carrying the faint scent of lavender from a candle I'd lit on the coffee table. Noah slept on the couch, his fever finally broken, his small chest rising and falling under a quilt I'd draped over him. The fever patch was gone, replaced by a damp cloth Chelsea had pressed to his forehead, her hands steady, but her eyes still shadowed with worry. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, a half-empty mug of chamomile tea between my hands, its warmth seeping into my fingers. The silence between us wasn't heavy, but it wasn't easy either. It was cautious, like a bridge being tested step by step. Chelsea hadn't left since that night, 3 days ago, when she'd shown up desperate and broken. I'd let them stay for Noah's sake, but I'd been clear. This wasn't a return to the past. No leaning on me, no expectations, no slipping back into the role of their savior. She'd nodded, her face earnest, and promised to respect my boundaries. Now, as I watched her move quietly around my small apartment, I wondered if she could keep that promise, or if desperation would pull her back to old patterns. She'd been trying, I couldn't deny that. Yesterday, she'd cooked breakfast, pancakes simple but golden, the kind Noah loved. She'd burned the first batch, the kitchen filling with the sharp smell of charred batter, but she'd laughed it off, fanning the smoke with a dish towel while Noah giggled from the couch. "I'm rusty," she'd said, catching my eye, a shy smile breaking through her usual reserve. I'd nodded, not smiling back but not turning away either. It was something, small but real. She'd cleaned the dishes after, scrubbing the pan until it gleamed, and later she'd folded Noah's clothes, her hands careful, almost reverent, as if each small act was a plea for forgiveness. This morning she'd gone out while Noah napped, returning with a small grocery bag, milk, bread, a few apples, paid for with cash she'd scraped together from her purse. "I don't want to take from you," she'd said, unpacking the items with a quiet determination. "I know I've done that too much already." Her words had caught me off guard, a flicker of the Chelsea I'd once known, the one who'd blushed when I gave her that silver bracelet, who'd hugged me tight after Noah's birth. But I didn't let myself soften, not fully. Words were easy, actions took time. Now, as the rain tapped the windows, Chelsea sat across from me, her hands wrapped around her own mug, the steam curling upward like a question. Noah's soft snores filled the space, a reminder of why she was here. I studied her, her hair still messy, her eyes tired but clearer than they'd been that first night. She looked like someone trying to climb out of a hole, but I knew how deep that hole was. I'd been part of digging it, with every dollar, every sacrifice, every time I'd let their needs eclipse mine. "Chelsea," I said, my voice low to avoid waking Noah. "You've been here 3 days. You're doing things, cooking, cleaning, buying groceries. I see it, but I need to know what your plan is. You can't stay here forever, and I'm not your fallback. What's next?" She flinched, just slightly, her fingers tightening around the mug. For a moment, I thought she'd retreat, hide behind excuses or tears, but she met my gaze, her eyes steady despite the tremble in her lips. "I know I can't stay," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I've been thinking about it, Evelyn. I've got a friend in Salem, Tara. She runs a daycare. She says she could use help, maybe even give me a part-time job. It's not much, but it's a start. I could afford a small place for me and Noah, something simple. I need a little time to make it happen." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral, though her words stirred something in me, hope maybe, but guarded. A job, a plan, a step toward independence. It sounded good, but I'd heard promises before. I thought of Eric's smooth assurances, his "we'll make it up to you" that never came. Chelsea wasn't Eric, but she'd been part of his lies, his dismissal of me. I leaned back in my chair, the wood creaking softly, and crossed my arms. "That's a start," I said, "but plans don't mean much without follow-through. You've got to show me, Chelsea, not just with words, not just with pancakes, with action." She swallowed, her throat bobbing, but she didn't look away. "I will," she said, her voice stronger now. "I know I messed up, Evelyn. I let Eric call the shots, let him push you away. I was scared, of him, of losing what we had, of being alone. But I'm not that person anymore. I don't want to be." She paused, her eyes flicking to Noah, then back to me. "I want Noah to grow up seeing strength, not fear. And I want him to know you, not as someone we took from, but as the woman who taught me what strength looks like." Her words hit me, sharp and unexpected, like a sudden break in the clouds. I felt a tug in my chest, a mix of warmth and wariness. I wanted to believe her, to see the spark in her eyes as truth, not desperation. But trust was a muscle I'd let atrophy, and rebuilding it would take more than a speech. I thought of the community center, the students who called me by name, the gloves I'd bought for myself, small anchors in a life I'd reclaimed. I couldn't risk that for a promise, no matter how sincere it sounded. I stood, moving to the window, the rain's rhythm steady against the glass. The city stretched out below, its lights soft through the drizzle, each one a small defiance against the dark. My reflection stared back, gray hair tucked behind my ears, eyes tired but sharp, a woman who'd learned to stand alone. I turned back to Chelsea, my voice calm but unyielding. "I hear you, Chelsea, and I'm not shutting you out, but you've got to prove it, day by day, step by step. Noah can stay here while you figure things out, but you're on your own for the rest. No leaning on me to fix it. Can you handle that?" She nodded, her jaw set, a flicker of resolve in her eyes. "I can," she said. "I will. Thank you, Evelyn, for giving me a chance, even after everything." I didn't respond, just watched her as she rose to check on Noah, her hand brushing his hair with a tenderness that made my heart ache. I thought of the years I'd carried them, the lies that had shattered me, the boundaries I'd drawn to protect myself. Chelsea's efforts were a start, but they were fragile, untested. Could she break free of Eric's shadow, of the patterns that had kept her silent? Could she become someone I could trust again? And if she did, what would that mean for me, for the life I'd built, the peace I'd found? The rain fell harder now, a steady drum against the window, and I felt the weight of the challenge ahead. Letting Chelsea try wasn't just about her, it was about me, about whether I could open my heart without losing myself. And as I watched Noah sleep, his small hand curled against the quilt, I wondered, was this a new beginning, or just another test I'd have to face alone? What does it mean to face the truth and choose yourself, even when it hurts? Chelsea's efforts had stirred hope, but trust was a fragile thread, and Eric's shadow still loomed. I'd let them into my home, my heart, but only so far. Boundaries were my armor now. When the final test came, it wasn't just about them. It was about me, whether I could stand firm, not as a mother or grandmother, but as Evelyn, whole and unbroken. Could I let go of the past without losing the love I still carried? The Portland morning was sharp, the air crisp with the bite of early winter. Sunlight spilled through my apartment windows, painting the hardwood in golden streaks, but the warmth didn't reach the knot in my chest. I stood in the kitchen, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the faint lavender from last night's candle, now just a puddle of wax. Noah sat at the table, his small hands wrapped around a mug of hot cocoa, his cheeks no longer flushed with fever, but bright with the cautious joy of a child sensing safety. Chelsea was in the living room, folding a blanket with careful precision, her movements deliberate, as if each task was a step toward proving herself. It had been a week since they'd arrived, a week of small gestures, Chelsea's cooking, her quiet insistence on paying for groceries, her late-night calls to her friend Tara in Salem, planning a job, a new start. I'd watched her closely, searching for cracks in her resolve, but she'd held steady, her eyes carrying a determination I hadn't seen in years. Noah had been my anchor, his laughter a reminder of why I'd opened the door, but I hadn't softened fully. Trust wasn't a gift anymore. It was a currency, earned through time and truth. The phone buzzed on the counter, a harsh vibration that cut through the morning's calm. Eric's name flashed on the screen and my stomach twisted, a reflex from months of silence and years of pain. Chelsea froze, her hands stilling on the blanket, her eyes darting to me, wide with something close to fear. Noah looked up, oblivious, blowing bubbles into his cocoa. I picked up the phone, my thumb hovering over the answer button, my heart thudding with a mix of dread and defiance. This was it, the moment I'd known would come. Eric, the son who'd lied, dismissed me, called me small, was reaching out, but I wasn't the same Evelyn he'd pushed away. I answered, my voice steady, cold. "Eric." "Mom," he said, his tone rushed, edged with a nervousness I hadn't heard before. "I've been trying to reach Chelsea. She's not answering. Is she with you? Is Noah okay?" His words tumbled out, a mix of concern and something else, control maybe, or panic at losing it. I glanced at Chelsea, her face pale, her hands gripping the blanket like a lifeline. "They're here," I said, my words deliberate. "Noah's fine. Chelsea's figuring things out. What do you want, Eric?" A pause, heavy and tense. I could picture him, pacing in that Portland house I'd helped buy, his jaw tight, his eyes narrowed. "I want my family back," he said, his voice softening, but it felt rehearsed, like a line he'd practiced. "I messed up, Mom. I know that. I shouldn't have lied about Thanksgiving. I shouldn't have said those things when you stopped the money. I was stressed, out of my depth. But I'm better now. I've got a new job, a plan. I want to fix this. Let me talk to Chelsea." His words were smooth, polished, but they grated against me, sharp with the echo of past promises. "We'll make it up to you. It's just this once." I thought of the Hawaii photo, his grin under a tropical sun while I sat alone. I thought of his anger, his "don't be so small," the way he'd turned my sacrifices into obligations. I looked at Chelsea, her eyes fixed on me, waiting, and I saw the truth. She was trying, but Eric's pull was strong, a tide that could drag her back into silence. "Eric," I said, my voice low, unyielding. "You don't get to fix this with a phone call. You lied to me. You pushed me out. You made Chelsea and Noah part of your lies. And now you think a few words make it right? No. Chelsea's here because she chose to leave you, because Noah needed safety. If you want to talk to her, you ask her, not me. But don't expect me to hand them over like nothing happened." Chelsea's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise, then gratitude. Noah sipped his cocoa, unaware, his small feet swinging under the table. Eric's voice hardened, the mask slipping. "Mom, come on. You can't keep my family from me. I'm his father. I'm her husband. You're not part of this." Not part of this. The words cut, but they didn't break me. I stood taller, the phone pressed to my ear, the counter cool under my free hand. "I'm not keeping anyone from you," I said, my voice like steel. "But I'm not your doormat anymore, Eric. I gave you a decade, money, time, my home. You gave me lies and excuses. Chelsea's making her own choices now, and Noah's safe. If you want to be part of their lives, prove it. Not to me, to them. And don't call me again until you're ready to face what you've done." I ended the call, the silence rushing back, sharp and clean. My hands trembled, but my heart was steady, a fire burning where fear used to live. Chelsea stared at me, her mouth slightly open, the blanket forgotten in her lap. "Evelyn," she whispered, "you didn't have to do that. He's not going to take that well." "I know," I said, setting the phone down. It's screen dark now. "But I'm not here to make him comfortable. I'm here for you and Noah as long as you're honest with me. Are you ready to face him, Chelsea? because he's not going to stop." She nodded, slow but certain, her jaw set. "I am," she said, her voice stronger than I'd expected. "I don't want to go back to how it was. I want better, for Noah, for me. I'll talk to him, but on my terms. Thank you, Evelyn, for standing up for us." I didn't smile, but I felt a shift, a small crack in the walls I'd built. I walked to the table, ruffling Noah's hair, his giggle a balm to the tension. "Finish your cocoa, kiddo," I said, my voice soft. He grinned, oblivious to the storm we'd just weathered. I looked at Chelsea, her eyes meeting mine, and saw something new. Resolve, not just desperation. She was trying, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start. I moved to the window, the sunlight warm against my face, the city stretching out below, alive and indifferent. My reflection stared back, gray hair, lines etched deep, but eyes that held a quiet strength. I thought of the years I'd given, the lies I'd swallowed, the boundaries I'd drawn. I'd faced Eric, not as his mother, but as Evelyn, a woman who'd learned her worth. I'd chosen myself, but I'd also chosen to let Chelsea try, to keep Noah close. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step, a balance between love and self-respect. The phone stayed silent, but I knew Eric would call again. Chelsea would face him, and I'd be there, not as a crutch, but as a witness to her strength or her failure. Noah's laughter filled the room, a reminder of what mattered. I'd grown, not just older, but stronger, whole in a way I hadn't been before. But what would this new balance cost? And could we hold it when Eric's shadow came knocking again? What does it mean to find peace after a storm you never chose? I'd faced Eric's lies, Chelsea's regret, and the fragile hope of rebuilding with Noah's small hand in mine. I'd drawn boundaries, stood firm, and learned to love myself without losing the love I carried for them. But as I looked at the life I'd built, I realized the final step wasn't about them. It was about me. Could I choose my own calm, my own joy, and let the past rest without letting it define me? The Portland afternoon was soft, the sky a pale blue brushed with wisps of clouds that drifted like afterthoughts. I stood in the park across from my apartment, the grass damp under my boots, the air sharp with the scent of pine and fresh earth. A breeze tugged at my scarf, the one I'd finished knitting for myself, its deep green threads a quiet rebellion against the years I'd spent crafting for others. My hands were empty, no phone, no list of tasks, just the weight of a small stone I'd picked up from the path, smooth and cool against my palm. It felt like an anchor, grounding me to this moment, this life I'd chosen. The apartment behind me was quiet now. Chelsea and Noah had left 2 days ago, bound for Salem, where Tara's daycare job waited. Chelsea's goodbye had been tearful, but steady, her arms tight around me, her voice low with gratitude. "I'll keep going, Evelyn," she'd said, Noah clinging to her leg, his eyes bright with the promise of a new start. "Not just for him, but for me. Thank you. For everything." I'd nodded, my throat tight, and handed her a small quilt for Noah, its patches stitched with care during late nights when trust was still a question. It wasn't forgiveness, not fully, but it was faith, in her, in the possibility of change. Eric hadn't called again. I hadn't expected him to, not after our last conversation, when I'd laid bare his betrayal and refused to bend. His silence was a wound, but it was also a gift, a space where I could breathe, unburdened by his demands. I'd heard from Chelsea that he'd moved out of the house, crashing with a friend, his new job barely covering his debts. Part of me ached for the boy he'd been, the one who'd run to me with scraped knees and wide eyes. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man who'd chosen lies over love. I couldn't save him, and I no longer wanted to try. I walked slowly along the lake, its surface glinting under the sun, ripples spreading from a duck's gentle glide. The park was alive, children laughing, a jogger's steady rhythm, the hum of life moving forward. I thought of the years I'd given them, the house I'd sold, the money I'd sent, the nights I'd spent rocking Noah or cooking for Chelsea. I'd been their foundation, their safety net, until their betrayal, the Hawaii lie, Eric's "no space for you," shattered that role. I'd rebuilt myself, not as their mother or grandmother, but as Evelyn, a woman with her own dreams, her own strength. The community center had become my haven. My sewing classes were full now, the room buzzing with students, young, old, eager, fumbling, who called me Evelyn, with a warmth that filled the spaces Eric's absence left. I'd started sketching designs, simple patterns for quilts and scarves, dreaming of a small shop maybe, or an online store. It was a spark, fragile but growing, a reminder that 64 wasn't too late to begin. I'd bought a new coat last week, deep blue, its wool soft against my skin. Not for Noah, not for Chelsea, but for me, a choice that felt like a promise. I stopped by the lake's edge, the stone still in my hand, its weight a quiet comfort. I thought of Chelsea's last words, her resolve, and Noah's small wave as they'd driven away. I thought of Eric, somewhere out there, carrying the consequences of his choices. I'd loved them fiercely, and part of me always would. But love didn't mean sacrifice anymore. It meant boundaries, respect, a balance that let me keep my peace. I'd opened my door to Chelsea, held space for Noah, but I'd held myself first, my needs, my joy, my right to exist beyond their shadows. I tossed the stone into the lake, watching it sink, the ripples spreading wide before fading. It felt like letting go, not of love, but of guilt, of the need to fix what wasn't mine to repair. I turned back toward the apartment, my steps light, the scarf catching the breeze. The city stretched out around me, its sounds and scents a tapestry I was part of, not apart from. I'd faced the storm, betrayal, loss, the ache of rebuilding, and come through, not unbroken, but whole in a new way. The future was uncertain. Chelsea might falter, Eric might resurface, Noah might grow up with questions I couldn't answer. But I wasn't afraid. I'd learned to stand, to choose myself, to find peace in the quiet moments like this one. As I walked home, the sun warm on my face, I felt a truth settle in me. I was enough. Not for them, but for me. And that was the truest victory of all. What would come next? I didn't know. But for the first time, I was ready to meet it, not as a mother, not as a savior, but as Evelyn, free and at peace.